Dividing with exponents and power to power level 2. So let's start with the original problem. We have in parentheses 6 to the power of 0 inside parentheses with the power of negative 2 on the outside. And then we have our fraction bar. And in the denominator we have 6 to the power of negative 2. Like we did with multiplication, I'm going to focus on the parentheses. I'm going to try and simplify the numerator before I go ahead and try and simplify the whole fraction. So when I have a power inside and outside, I multiply them. So in the numerator, I would write 6 to the power of 0 multiplied by a negative 2. Because that's the operation. When you're dealing with power inside, outside, multiply them. On the bottom, I still had just going to rewrite 6 to the negative 2. All right, so 6 to the 0 times negative 2 simplifies to 0, which is kind of nice. And then in the bottom, it's just 6 to the negative 2. And then when we're dealing with division, we subtract the exponents. So I'll start by writing 6 to the power of 0, and then I will subtract this negative 2 on the bottom. But again, watch out for when you have a negative negative. That's going to switch to a positive. So in the next step, 6 to the power of 0 subtract a negative 2 is really going to simplify to 6 to the 0 plus 2. But we've been doing this for quite a while when you have double negative like that. So obviously 0 plus 2 is 2. So that's going to be 6 to the power of 2, which is a viable option. Or you understand that we could write that as a negative exponent by moving that base 6 to the bottom, and then that positive exponent becomes a negative exponent, and then put it over 1. So you could have that. Now, the last option is you could actually figure out what 6 squared. Please remember that 6 squared is really just 36. In other words, what you can do is 6 squared is 6 multiplied by 6, which is the same as 36. And often they'll have you figure this out. That is when the power is usually pretty small. If it's like a power of 5, 6, or 7, like something like that, they're probably not going to have you figure it out. So the answer to this first one is 36. Now as I go on to the next one's pretty similar. The only difference is that I've got the parenthesis in the bottom, but I would suggest you pause this, attempt it, and then see what my explanation is. So step 1, I'm going to rewrite it, the original problem, 6 to the power of negative 3. On the bottom, I have 6 to the power of negative 6 inside parentheses, and outside I have a 2. So I'm going to focus on the parentheses. I'm going to simplify this power inside and outside first. And so I would write 6 to the power of negative 6 multiplied by 2. And then I'll rewrite the top, 6 to the power of negative 3. And then I'll simplify the bottom in the next step. So negative 6 times 2, that's going to give me a negative 12. So on the top, I just rewrite 6 to the power of negative 3, divide by 6 to the power of negative 12. And when we're dividing and we have the same base, we'll subtract the exponents. So start with the numerator. I'm going to write 6 to the power of negative 3. Then I will subtract the negative 12 from the bottom. And just like in the last problem, again, please watch out for this double negative. So I'm going to write 6 to the power of negative 3 plus 12. And then, let's see, a negative 3 add 12, that's going to give me 6 to the power of 9. And that's probably going to be the answer. 6 to the power of 9, you can see that there. The exponent 9 is pretty large, so trying to find out what 6 multiplied by itself 9 times is going to be kind of ridiculous. Now, before we move on, I want to remind you that you could have written this as the negative exponent, in which you move the base to the bottom, and then that positive exponent 9 becomes a negative 9 exponent. So then you just rewrite it. But those are equivalent. All right, so the next set is now where the power will apply itself to the whole fraction. But sticking with the idea we want to work inside the parentheses, we're actually going to do everything inside here, and then we'll deal with the power on the outside. So step 1, start with the original problem. 4 to the power of 1 divide by 4 to the power of negative 3. We're going to do that first, and then we have a power of negative 2. So when I have the same base and I'm dividing, again, we're going inside the parentheses first, I'm going to write 4 to the power of 1 subtract, and then the number I'm subtracting from the bottom is a negative 3. And that is all still inside the parentheses. Don't forget that negative 2 on the outside. So 4 to the power of 1 subtract a negative 3. We're going to simplify that. That's going to give us 4, let's see, that's going to be 1 plus 3. So I'm going to write 1 plus 3, just simplifying the double negative. And then 1 plus 3 is 4. So inside I have 4 to the power of 4. And then I still have that negative 2 on the outside. Almost done. Now we have a power inside and outside. And we simplify that by multiply them. And I'm going to put 4 to the power of 4 multiplied by a negative 2. And that's going to leave me with 4 to the power of negative 8, which could be an option. And it actually is the solution right here. Or you could go ahead and find the reciprocal to that, in which 4 moves to the bottom, and that negative 8 becomes a positive 8 exponent, and then put 1 on top. And of course, they're not going to have you figure out 4 multiplied by itself 8 times. All right. Before you go to the last example, I would suggest that you go ahead and pause the video, give it a go, and then compare what you get to what I get. So let's start with the original problem, 2 to the power of negative 1, divide by 2 to the power of 0, inside parentheses. So we're going to do inside the parentheses just like we did last time. And when we're dividing, we have the same base. We're going to subtract the exponents. So inside parentheses, I'm going to write 2 to the power of negative 1, subtract, and the number on the bottom is 0. So it's really just negative 1 minus 0. We don't have any double negatives, so all you have to do is just what's negative 1 subtract nothing. Well, that's going to give me 2 to the power of negative 1, which is kind of nice. In the last example, we had to go ahead and write the double negative 1 subtract a negative 3 as 1 plus 3. So we actually save ourselves a step on this. So just to clarify, negative 1 minus 0 is just negative 1. Don't forget that exponent of 3 on the outside. And then when we're dealing with powers inside and outside, we'll multiply those powers. So 2 to the power of negative 1 multiplied by 3. So then you have negative 1 times 3, so that's going to be 2 to the power of negative 3, which again could be a viable option. I don't see any negative exponents, so this is going to let me know that I'll write it as a reciprocal, in which I put base 2 on the bottom. That power of negative 3 is now a positive 3 in its reciprocal position. And we write it 1 over 2 to the power of 3. Or, now the power of 3, that's pretty small, so they might want you to figure that out. So that's going to give us actually 1 over the power, or 1 over 8. Now just a reminder, 2 to the power of 3 is really 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then 4 times 2 is 8. So the answer that they actually have there is just 1 over 8. And there you have it. Thank you for watching.